Salutations, welcome back to Do Chat Day, and today we're going to be talking about some interesting subjects regarding the state of the game and where we think Catalyst Black is headed. I won't talk about everything added in the updates we are referencing, but you can find all that info in my 0.20 and 0.22 patch notes review if you're unfamiliar with the details. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff to go over, so let's hop right into it. So, first of all, just right off the bat, I wanted to talk about, or rather I'd like to let Colton talk about 0.20 and the idea behind the vaulted abilities, which a lot of people were a little upsetty spaghetti about. But yeah, I don't know. You can just
there's sort of two things, because whenever anything, I think people are upset for a good reason.
Yeah.
Because whenever anything gets removed, it's always gonna feel bad. There'll just be less options and less stuff to do.
Yeah.
But I think the vaulting the abilities made a lot of sense when you think about the beta as what it is, which is a beta and not an actual. It's not an actual game. It wasn't there for really the players. It's there to make the game better. And the idea with the vaulting abilities is I think a lot of the early abilities were sort of mass-produced, kind of generic abilities that were okay, we'll have a barrier ability, we'll have a single barrier, team barrier, we'll have a single heal, team heal, etc. Totem, a slow totem speed that'll do everything. And I think people were okay, well, why would you take away stuff? Why don't just add new stuff and keep the old stuff if people like it or whatever? But for one, you kind of want every item in your game to follow a consistent design perspective, and every item in your game to be interesting and unique. There is a real cost to having more items, which is that things get kind of bloated. At each item, there's almost a cost to having more stuff. So you want to make every part of your game important and make a lot of sense and everything. So the issue with a lot of those items is, for one, they were generic and boring. No one can tell you that the barrier abilities were fun to use. You know what I mean?
Woo, catalytic sprint. Woo.
Because the issue is a lot of them, instead of doing something use them and you have to time them well or do something,
Well, yeah, the barrier ability I used was shield, which gave you a 2,000 health shield that lasted for 3 seconds. So
there was no timing. There was nothing interesting about that one. Now, I don't think many people are lamenting that, but some more controversial ones might be, I think a lot of people really liked the protection, the invincibility. I think from that perspective, I think the reason they removed it is because unless, obviously they could have continued, as people have pointed out, to increase the cooldown and reduce duration.
For people who came in after, the protection just made you invincible.
It was like Clemency Vial, but you could activate it.
Yeah.
And I think you could definitely have continued, if they wanted to balance it, they could have reduced the duration and increased the cooldown until it was balanced, because it was overpowered. But obviously, it could have theoretically been balanced. But I think the issue you run into there is if they kept it as it would have been the default sort of protection ability forever, because it was just the protection ability. What they're leaning in towards now, and what you want to do in sort of a mature game as it goes on, is you want to have abilities fill a more specific niche, and have sort of situations where it's good and situations where it's bad. Now, right now, there's sort of a hole in the item pool, which is A, a protection ability that is Protector Banner, and B, just a way to prevent yourself from dying or being bursted down. But what you're going to see, almost guaranteed, is they're going to reintroduce ways to protect yourself, but they're going to be more niche and more unique to different situations or abilities. I don't know, you're going to have some ability that hide, stealth, or protects you while you're in a bush. It's going to be something. What they want to do is basically, instead of having generic abilities that work in every situation, they want to have unique abilities which work in specific builds and specific scenarios. And this allows you to have a much larger and healthier pool of items, without items kind of competing with each other as directly. So if you have two very similar items that are just give yourself a barrier, either one's going to be better or one's going to be worse, and that's uninteresting. Instead, what they want is a bunch of niche and unique items which are better in different modes, scenarios, builds, etc. And to do that, you can't have these sort of generic items that are just, they're not specific. They don't work in any scenario. They do a kind of boring thing. And I think the same could be said for a lot of the old items. As much as I enjoyed a lot of them, if you look at the direction the new items are going, right, they work in very specific playstyles. Oh, this is for rolling, and it gives you only when you're close to an enemy. So, there's a lot of limits on that ability. It gives you more damage while rolling. While being close to an enemy, you can't use it with snipers, for example, right? That's so they want to make these items that fit with certain builds and archetypes rather than just working all the time. And you can kind of see that in the abilities that they removed.
Bro, remember catalytic protection?
Yeah.
With 22-second
Yeah,
cooldown.
there wasn't anything interesting about it. It just protected your team for a bit. I imagine in new protector abilities that come out in future, they're gonna maybe they'll protect your team in a certain area that you have to aim or something just that gives it more interest when using it. It'll be more exciting.
Yeah.
And more unique. Anyway.
But I thought that was a pretty good insight on why they removed the vaulted
I don't
abilities.
know why they did it, but that's what I would suspect.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And also, I don't think they wanted you to be able to progress and acquire items that they weren't happy with being in the
Right.
game.
If imagine the game launches and they have all these items that they don't really want in the game,
But like,
people
have them
invest,
super
buy
infused.
them, and then they remove them in the future. The fallout is way worse than it is removing them when the game actually launches.
Yeah. Anyway, so next I want to talk about 0.22, which was a pretty big patch, which they kind of undid a lot of the bigness by adding back the modes that they removed. But yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit because I thought that was interesting. Because a lot of people were very upset when the modes were removed, and rightly so. But yeah, I just want to talk about that patch and the new gear especially.
What do you think of the? The Incapac conjugate is universally understood to be. It's bad. They've since buffed it, though that hasn't actually come through. But they've showed intent to buff it.
Yeah, to give
but
it.
What are your thoughts on the item? Sort of just as an item rather than how good it is.
So immediately very happy that they added another protector heavy, because protector, I believe overall, definitely has the least items of any banner. So any new protector item, very happy about. It's weird. It's kind of weird that they gave it the exact same infusion perk as the Hailstorm, although I suppose that's a theme that they want for protector banner, where they increase the damage that enemies take. I don't know. It's so hard to kind of describe, because it has so low charges and it shoots so slow that you almost can't get good impact with the infusion perk if you're just shooting at them, and you almost just it's supposed to be a support weapon, right? I feel like it could have more range. I feel like it could have slightly more damage, and I feel like its infusion perk could be buffed, but I almost can't say, because the negate siren goes from being a poo-poo weapon to a god tier weapon at 7 stars or 8 stars, and this doubles it the infusion track doubles its clip size. You start dealing more damage as passively, and its infusion perk gets way better. So I almost can't say, and its shot speed gets increased. So I almost can't say how good it is. I think
we're not really asking how good it is, more just what you think of the item, which I think it's a fun. I like the idea of being able to take out, help your team focus, take out a single target. Yeah. So the Windwraith Talon.
Windwraith Talon, I super like the concept of the Windwraith Talon, because it's supposed to be more. I see it as more of an assassin-y playstyle, like a one man, like literally a hitman. You know, you're running around, speedy boy in Hydra, and you see the guy who has you see the Paragon. You run at him, you roll, you get 30% damage boost, and if you isolate that fight, you should be able to win that fight on your own. Whereas in a team fight, you're not that helpful. So I think all the items that they've been adding, I super like the ideas of them. They just haven't been. The last 2 items were insanely strong, and these ones weren't that strong. But I like the concept of all the items they've been adding.
Yeah, I think the issue with Windwraith Talon, for one, I think the damage buff isn't enough to justify all the limitations with it. There are easier ways to get more damage from a passive. So I think from a power level perspective, I think it's pretty weak. No matter how you slice it, because it's just easier to get more damage from the Helium Guard or whatever.
Well, the Helium Guard doesn't help you get the kill to trigger it, but
it doesn't. I feel like it's so much easier to do.
It is.
The same could be said for the sniper.
I feel like Windwraith Talon could give you more health than it does.
Yeah, it probably could. It's weird that it gives us such a low amount of health. Overall, power level wise, it's definitely super weak. But I think another issue you run into it when trying to use it is if you use it in a kind of ranger or assassin build, you won't have a lot of health.
Yeah.
And then if you use it with other kind of protection type items, you end up not having a whole lot of burst or damage. So it definitely needs buffs to either do more damage so that you can afford to be tankier, or more health so that you can use higher damaging items. But either way, it's a fun idea. Run up to enemies and roll at them and kill them. But
Yeah.
I think overall it feels a little super underwhelming right now.
And as Colton was talking about, it's definitely more niche, which I think is where they're heading for new items and such. But I'm excited to see what they're planning for the paradigm.
Paradigm.
That's how you spell paradigm?
Yes.
That's stupid. Okay, I'm excited to see
Looks like a new rocket launcher.
what's coming in
But either way.
coming in August. But yeah. Anyway, the other thing they did, which has kind of been undone, is they removed the modes in an attempt to they removed the rotating modes and the Coliseum in the hopes to kind of consolidate the player pool. And I don't think we can really tell if that worked, because I didn't see a noticeable increase, but I'm sure it's a lot easier to see when you have like the stats on that.
I mean, the idea is there's basically two variables to weigh there, which is total players versus like players grouped up together in a game. So what I would imagine is they were measuring, okay, did let people stop playing because we got rid of these modes, or did they go to play different modes? And what I would suspect is maybe the data found that instead of playing other modes, people just stopped playing instead, to an extent. So that's probably, but I mean, there's no way to know. There's not really that interesting to talk about. But they've reverted that change. People who like
modes are back.
old modes will be happy. Either way, it's not a huge change. We're not going through the whole patch notes, I don't think.
No. But this is just up for reference.
Yeah, I don't think we need to talk about quests too much.
Yeah.
So...
Oh, yeah, and the progression that they added in 0.22 was super nice, where they made it so that you get XP from games again.
Yeah, we weren't sure how much dust you'd necessarily get, or I mean XP you'd necessarily get. It's definitely less than you got back in the day for each game, which makes sense because there's other ways of getting XP now. But it's definitely a fun incentive to kind of, the items you use more, you're going to level up more quickly.
Yeah.
And from like, you play an Eventide, you're going to get like 60 or 70 XP per item. Across all of your items, that ends up being, a couple hundred dust, or, dust's worth of XP, which is pretty good per game. It's definitely going to speed up your progression a little bit over the long term. You're not really going to, it's a minute amount in the short term, but I mean, I think it's just something that feels good to play, and then, you see your dust go up on the items you use. Everyone likes... It's just a fun thing for the items that you use to actually level up faster. But anyway, so I think that's felt really good. I think that's a really positive change. And then the other thing I hope they continue to do, which I really like, is the quests to get the new items. Yeah, that's a great change.
I love that a lot. I almost feel like they can make the quests slightly harder, but just the quest being there at all is super fun. I like them a lot.
Yeah.
And they get you the infusion. It's not even like you just get them.
You get one or two duplicates. So I hope they continue to do that. That's super good, and it makes it feel really fun when the new items come out to be able to, I can grind to get them right away, rather than, I hope they come up in my shop, I guess, or I pull them from something.
Or I'll have to pay $40.
Well, yeah. It feels a lot better, so. As far as the modes go, though, going back to that real quick, I think they definitely aren't sure like what they want to do with the games and with the modes and such that are in the game right now, and where they want to go with that.
Yeah, the Coliseum's another. The Coliseum's in a kind of weird.
Which sort of takes the question of like right now the game definitely feels like they're still like experimenting. It doesn't feel super like nailed down what they want to do with everything. Which I think some people are sort of like disgruntled by or surprised by, like, oh, it's out, shouldn't it be like everything locked in? Which I think they're thinking of like where the game is right now as a sort of
open
beta where they're testing different things out and everything. Obviously, I don't think they're in full like promotion mode for the game right now, or doing events for it and stuff like that, which I expect to see once they have everything locked down more. Things I personally would hope to see that where they take with the game modes. I mean, I definitely think they had the right idea of trying to consolidate, because right now there's kind of not enough players and too many different things they can queue into. Even games like Battlefront or Battlefield have sort of systems to try and encourage players, because when you have lots of game modes, splitting up the player base is always an issue, even for those types of games. So I guess I like the idea. But I wonder if maybe instead of getting rid of those modes, they can better integrate them into progression. Because one big issue with the rotating modes is there's no progression reason to play them, right? They're not really, they don't come up in quests or anything like that. So maybe they can, instead of removing them, better integrate them into the game, or figure out a
like
different
capture
solution.
like 3 flags and capture
Yeah,
5
or just play like 3 rotating game modes instead of a specific one. I'm not sure, but they definitely felt awkward, and they still feel awkward now that they're back. But I do agree they added a variety that you don't get
and
from the
definitely
other
more
3
maps.
Yeah.
More maps to
Um,
choose from. So I want to move on because there've been a lot of Colton touched on this a little bit, but there's been a lot of like frustration in the Catalyst Black community that I've been seeing. Where people are like, oh, the vaulted abilities, or like like, oh, the balances aren't why aren't they nerfing these super OP items and stuff, But I wanted to talk about some problems that I think are actually affecting the game, because I don't think a lot of that stuff matters a whole bunch. Uh, I'm fine that they're still figuring out what they want the items to be, because again, I'm not considering this to be global launch. I'm considering this to be
well, I mean,
more.
that part is just the normal stuff. It's not even
Yeah,
related to that. Like, as far as balance goes, um, any game, any online game if you ever play, they're gonna balance a select few items every patch, even if they know certain items are an issue. Um, and that's just because every time you make a balance change, there's sort of uncertainty. Will this be too far, too little? What's going to happen? And so you sort of have a certain budget of A, testing time, and B, sort of you don't
yeah.
want to introduce too much chaos into the game at once. So that's sort of where the balance stuff comes
But I,
from.
I just want to talk about
Well, each point, I figured.
each point. But I just want to talk about some problems and try to shed some light on some of the misconceptions for balancing a game and stuff like that. So first, um, player base, at least in NA and at least for our servers, the player base is very small. I've heard that like other regions have a lot more players, and I don't know, I can't verify if that's true, but like at least the average game, unless you're playing around like when dailies reset, isn't.
Has like a couple
Yeah, it's
people,
like a
yeah.
couple people.
Yeah, that's definitely true in NA. I mean, you can look at that different ways. A lot of people on the Reddit are like, "Oh, game dead," whatever.
Yeah,
I definitely. It seems like there was an initial spike of players, and then now it's sort of just you do definitely see more players than you used to, but it changes over time. But it's definitely still not a large number of players, at least in NA. And there's also sort of issues with queues separating people out in different
yeah.
ways. I think they could handle again the game modes better connect players.
And there's still a lot of bugs just overall.
But as far as the player base thing, I definitely think they're not promoting the game at the moment.
Not
Is from
really.
what I've
Yeah.
seen, at least in NA. I'm sure they're testing stuff in different regions and stuff like that. But it seems like they're taking the approach that right now they're sort of just have the game out there and are using the large number of players to improve stability and stuff like that, get servers rolled out, rather than being in a big promotion mode to try and get a bunch of people into the game. At least that's what it seems like what they're doing. Obviously, that could be wrong. And
I mean, with how buggy the game is, it's not really like that.
I mean, it's
There's a lot of
no. I
bugs.
mean, it's not more bugged than there are plenty of launched games that are just as buggy.
Yeah, yeah. But
I wouldn't say that's the biggest issue.
no,
But
no. But and then limited maps for Eventide only has one map. And Slayer, which only have two. Yeah, there's only 2 maps for Slayer. Which, I mean, the problems with that is pretty self-explanatory. More maps. Obviously, you don't want to have too many maps to where like you queue into a map that like you've just like there's just so many maps that it takes forever to get familiar with them. But there could be definitely more
I
maps.
definitely
Another Eventide map would be so
another
cool.
Eventide map would be super good. I mean, I definitely think there's a lot of content that the game definitely needs to sort of feel more complete. I think more Slayer maps are probably the most important thing.
Yeah,
Um,
especially with how quick Slayer games are.
without and yeah,
I think Slayer needs to be longer.
yeah. I mean, they're still figuring out
So
what to
does
do with the
Eventide.
modes. They're removing the double. They move double damage from Slayer and stuff like that. But as far as maps go, I think that's a super valid complaint. And I think there's definitely also holes in the items that exist right now. You can't get full protector and stuff like that, which is super
Yeah,
weird. So there's definitely more from a content perspective.
and yeah,
There's more content that needs to
and for
be
a
there.
lot of banners, especially Protector, you only have like one option when it comes to like maybe heavies or like primaries. Um, like primalists, you only have one option for heavies and stuff.
I mean, like I said, when I first saw that roadmap, the road to ranked or whatever, I think the whole idea with that, and I could be wrong, but I think and I said this before, the whole idea with that is you launch the game, you get feedback, you get on these modes are popular, these modes aren't. this server issue is an issue, whatever, it's easier to test servers with more people on them, et cetera, et cetera. And you use that to improve the game and get it to a point where your advertisement and your player retainment, because that's a big metric, is player retainment, which basically means when a player downloads your game and starts using it, what percentage of those players stop playing. And I think the whole idea with where the game is right now is to get player retainment to a point where your advertisement is cost effective. So you advertise and you get people to download the game. And at that point, a high enough percentage of them keep playing that it's worth the money to advertise. That's that's what any game is shooting for. And I think that sort of ranked timeline, I would expect and hope to see that as they do that sort of major ranked update and bring the game up to a more mature point, and advertise, if at that point there's not enough players to sustain the game and stuff like that, that's when I would be concerned rather than now.
I'd like to touch on a little bit about what we think they're gonna do going forward, which we have talked about a little bit over the course of this video and in previous videos, but and also I want to talk about what would like to see personally, specific things added, specific things changed, and stuff like that.
Yeah, we got a little muddled there, but as far as game modes and that type of stuff, I would really like to see them address, I think, the valid complaints the community have about Slayer and Eventide, because those are the two most popular modes.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people agree Slayer is too short.
Yeah, Slayer should be longer. A lot of people agree Eventide should be longer.
And a lot of people also agree that the double damage buff is an issue in Eventide, which I think I agree with. I would like to see it. I still like the idea of a personal buff, but I'd like to see it either nerfed or changed in some way.
What about just a massive shield?
I think that's
you
dumb.
just get like 20,000.
No, that's even worse.
And it doesn't regenerate.
That's even dumb. No, I mean, I think that's a super valid complaint. I don't, they removed the arena, but haven't replaced it with anything. So Eventide feels too short. I think Slayer feels a little too short.
I mean, I think Eventide. I've enjoyed Eventide way more since they removed
moving
the arena.
Was a good change, but again, I think they have to replace it with something.
Yeah.
And I think Slayer has to be fixed. But the biggest issue with any game mode is definitely the Coliseum.
Yeah.
I was glad when they removed the Coliseum, because in my mind, the Coliseum was like so bad that it had to just be like a temporary or placeholder game mode. And I mean, they either have to totally overhaul the Coliseum or replace it. It's by far the worst game mode.
Yeah, it's too easy. There's really no. The only objective is just like the highest DPS possible, and it's not. It's not fun. That's the main thing.
It's not a fun game mode.
It's not fun to complete. You get 100 stars of Coliseum,
while also being too hard for new players if they're alone, where you won't get full stars. Yeah. I just think they need to make a mode that has more objectives to it and has sort of a clearer difficulty curve as more players join. There's a million different things you could do with it.
I was really hoping that the modes would be gone for longer and the Coliseum would be like reintroduced better, but
yeah,
the
Coliseum is a huge issue, and it sucks that you're forced to play the most boring mode ever.
Me on my way to get my 100 stars.
That's a huge issue. I know, definitely a legitimate issue with the game.
I mean, there's no protector ability.
There's no protector ability.
That's the issue. A lot of the vaulted protector abilities was catalytic sprint, catalytic protection, and warden.
And then I think a lot of people, I think most people agree as far as Hydra goes. Hydra's a great game mode, but there's issues with player base and getting players into Hydra, where often your Hydra games are more empty than any other type of game because players can't drop in throughout. I think either right now they could make Hydra drop out as sort of a temporary thing since it's not ranked anyway. I think would be a good solution, or to increase the wait period before the game starts to give players a higher chance to join. But until you have a bigger player base and sort of a way to get players into Hydra, either consolidate players into it or something. I think the way Hydra works right now doesn't work particularly well for having full lobbies. Because you get full lobbies of Eventide, you do get full lobbies of Slayer despite it being so short, but you really don't get full lobbies of Hydra, just because that 80-second window is super short for people queuing into it.
This used to be actually, I mean, this isn't really even a problem now, but a big problem in the past was that there were only a few really meta builds that would work if you're fighting against good people. Now there's a lot more valuable items. I still think that they can, obviously, I mean, I feel like they can always do more
I mean,
work
the
balancing,
balance is
but
always going to be a thing.
yeah,
I think
no,
the
it's always
balance
going to
right
be a
now
thing.
is in a pretty good
No,
place.
it is. It's in probably the best place it's been since launch.
Yeah.
But I mean, still, okay. Here, I have a personal grievance with the Northern Warmth Infusion perk. It's pure garbage.
No, I mean that's not even a big
Please-
issue. The
No.
final major issue
The final
is
major
mortars are
issue
terrible still. The primary
is the Northern
mortars.
Warmth Infusion perk. Is
No. The biggest issue they've tuned all I think the other item types to
That's
be
right.
usable. It's just a single item. I mean, the burst, their rifles are good,
Oh.
but mortars
yeah.
are still terrible.
Well, the primary mortars.
Hashtag rework mortars. That's
Primary
the biggest
mortar-
issue. With
Wait,
balance at the moment.
Pitch your rework.
Mortars?
Yeah.
I think mortars should be slower, harder to hit, slower to reload,
But deal way
and
more
deal
damage.
significantly more damage.
So when you hit, they're bigger boom, but they're
Yeah,
harder to
because
hit.
right now the issue is they travel quickly, so it's like they're easy to hit. So there's very little like you could tune the risk reward to be bigger reward when you hit, harder to do, in my opinion. But that's neither here nor there. So that's I guess a good overview of everything
I think that's pretty
going
cool.
on in the game at the moment.
Final thoughts. This is probably the best the game has looked, because I mean, we can just take the first patch as an example. When I was dropped in, snipers, oh boy, baby, could you just auto aim the objection? Deal 3,000 damage.
There's been definitely a lot of good changes, but there's also those changes have added new problems that also need to be addressed. So
yeah, no, but
that's about
game's in a super good spot. I'm super excited for when they iron out a lot of the bugs. They get the game in a nicer position so they can focus on balance changes and new content. New content is definitely the thing I've been excited about for long.
And they've been rolling out new items pretty quickly.
They've been rolling out new items. The new items have been definitely needed adjustments. I'm super happy with what they did. I think the Horn of Supremacy is in
Horn
a
of
good spot.
Supremacy and after this newest change, if it ends
I think
up
the Aleph Null
Aleph Null should be in a pretty good spot too.
They pooped on it.
over-nerfed it and then they brought it back a little bit.
I like how they halved its rate of fire and
That was
also nerfed its damage
overdone
and its
for sure.
infusion perk.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think the game is in a great place overall, as there are definitely still issues that I think people hope to be addressed by now, which I can understand. But I think things are definitely moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
I think removing the modes was maybe the wrong play, but something needs to be done with modes.
Yeah.
Because right now they sort of don't make the most sense. But either way.
Yeah, here's my closing statement. If every game mode you play had 2/3 humans, the game would be 100% better. You know, it would just be so much more fun than fighting two enemies on the enemy team in Eventide. That's again biggest problem with the game right now. But I just wanted to sit down, talk about our thoughts on the game, because there's been a lot of talk in the Catalyst Black community recently. But I hope you found it useful. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know your guys' thoughts overall, and have a good doodah day.